Hi, welcome to Crafted Sweetly. I'm Deanna. Thanks so much for being here. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I've done quite a few different tutorials on how to do the photo strips and various book folding tutorials. With this video, I wanted to give you another project idea, another idea of how you can do the photo books, but have something a little different. I'm starting off with two patterns this time. And I have one pattern here, which is the normal pattern. This is an ink saver. I've created the pattern using Photo Book Art. And this one has ink saver, which means that it only prints the pattern down the middle of the strip. So the strips are a little wider than in your traditional patterns, which are 1/2 inch. These are 3/4 of an inch. But the ink is only used right down the middle. So this is pattern number 1, and if you zoom in, or if you notice, this is starts on page 21 or strip number 21, and that's because I guess it's page number 21. The reason this is this page is because I've already started the project, so I wanted to get a few pages done before I jump in and do the tutorial. So this is pattern number 1. Very traditional. These, if you may notice, they're shorter. These are 7 inches, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So that's pattern number 1. For pattern number 2, same idea, except now I have the numbers in reverse order. So if I look at the bottom of my pile, it is 1 through 19 for the strips, and the top is 321, and I believe it was what was the last page? 352, I think. 352, yes. So what I did was, for pattern number 2, it's reversed. I'm flipping the pages and starting on the back side, okay? And what I did was, so I'll start off with pattern number 1, and you have to make sure you're keeping this straight. So this is maybe even marking the back of it, so you don't get confused, you know, pattern A or 1, and then pattern B or 2, whatever works for you. So I'll put this off to the side, and I'll just use from pattern 1 the usual way that I cut the strips. Now I'm using a Caterpillar, which I love because it has a light to it. And I do have a link below, but I've reached out to the company, and it turns out they're going through an update to this Caterpillar. They will have an updated version of it with some other additional features, and currently it's in production. So that's the latest update that I have as of the production of this video. So I'm going to trim off the top of this because I want this to be even up here. And the bottom I'm going to leave on so I don't get confused as to what strip I'm on, especially working on 2 patterns at the same time, because I'll be working on both of them at the same time. So I'm going to take all of these, and what I do is to create the score line these days is from a viewer or a member in another group, Facebook group. He was doing it where he was pressing against the edge of the paper cutter. He was using a guillotine, if I remember correctly. This is a roller type of cutter, but it works just as well. So I just run kind of my fingers along to make sure I'm holding the top with this one and creasing with my other hand, with my other finger. So at this point, I guess I can do the other side just so I can. Okay, I cut the strips from the first pattern, and if you've seen me fold these, this one doesn't have a score line because it's the last strip, but if you don't have a score line, I gently press all the way down and then give it a harder press so that it's, you know, it's more creased. And then let me do one more because I'll be using a couple of them. This one was already creased, so it's much easier. And then what I do is I'm going to arrange these on one side and then do the other one, the other pattern. Okay, so I'll just start with 3 strips. These strips I'll put by pattern 1 so I don't get confused. And then from pattern number 2, I'm going in reverse, like I said. So I'll continue cutting this sheet so that I have the strips to work with, and I'll cut 3 strips from this pattern. Okay, so I have 3 strips from this one, and I'll put that over there. Now, before I get them confused, I mean, the numbers are on the bottom, so that should help because those are the lower numbers and I know these are the higher numbers. And folded. So the next 3 strips in the book, pattern 1 is 21, 23, and 25, and pattern 2 is 31, 331, 329, and 327. Okay, so this is a great project. It's a really good mental exercise in keeping track of the numbers and the strips and where they go. So easy to confuse, so just kind of, it's a good way to focus on the project with this one. So I'm going to switch out my caterpillar to the book folding stand. I've got this pattern on one side and the other on the other, so I don't get confused. And as I mentioned, I already started this, so I'll move this out of the way so you can kind of, I'll explain what I'm doing. So the reason I cut the strips to 7 inches is I have the height of the book, which was 9 inches for the height. And I took the center part of the book, okay, because this is where I'm going to fold everything to, my focal point. And hopefully you can see the line here, right there. I actually took a pen and I marked, using a ruler, I basically did this where I marked the top of the book. See, that's 9 inches. I marked it at 4.5, and then I pressed this really hard and marked the point at the bottom at 4.5. Sorry, it's a little dark there. Okay, so I marked the bottom at 4.5 and then drew a line like this because I want to make sure, this is crucial, that this is right down at the middle and it's the same for every single page. Then what I did was, in order to figure out the length of my strips, now you could do where it's even shorter, you know, kind of like this if you want, but I decided to go all the way into the spine with the pattern. So my center point is where the line is, and then this part goes all the way into the spine. So let me move this down a little bit. So this is all the way into the spine, and before I press down here, I want to make sure that this is my point where I stop. So this is here, and then that's all the way into the spine. So pull your page back, and then at that point you can make this flat. Okay, so this is 7 inches if you look at it. Okay, and then same thing on this side. I'm coming back to the center point and going all the way into the spine. And I do anticipate that it's gonna get a little trickier the farther I go into the book, but hopefully it'll work out. So there's my right down to the center point into the spine. Okay, so to hold this down, I do add a little bit of double-sided tape there, just so the page doesn't go anywhere. And now the next thing is, I've decided that pattern A is on this side and pattern B is on this side. So I should actually flip my strips, otherwise I'll get confused. So my next strip here on this side is 21. So what I'm gonna do is, if I put this right here and then I try to cut it, it's gonna be hard. So what I use is, if you can see, like the pattern stops right here. So I'm going to cut everything down here is gonna get cut at an angle, okay, from that corner point straight up. So it's almost like a 45 degree, maybe it's 30 degree. It's probably like a 30 degree, not quite 45. And then same thing on this side, because if I put it in here, it's gonna kind of compete with the spine. So I'd rather cut it. I may end up doing some kind of a design right at the top once the book is done, just to cover that tip. But this is how your strip should look. You've got an angle cut and an angle cut this way. So now I'm gonna add the usual double-sided tape and put the strip on. And when I put the strip on, I want to make sure that it's all the way against the page as usual. And the tip right here is right at the tip of the page. Okay, if it's not, then your pattern is going to change. If you remember before, we would use the strip and use the top of the page to make sure everything is aligned properly. Well, there's no top of the page here, but we're using this corner to make sure that everything lines up, and then just press it down. Okay, and I'm going to repeat the same process on this side, but it's the highest number. So I've got 331. And I'm going to cut, again, same thing. My pattern stops right there. And I'm going to cut it from that corner of the pattern straight up. And the same thing up here. And right at the tip. Now, if this strip overlaps this, on the inside, that's fine. You want to be right at the tip of the page. That's the part that's important, so that the pattern always aligns properly. Okay, and that's it. So that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen for every page. And it's a pattern where you have to work with both of them at the same time. You can't do the top for all the pages and then go back and do the bottom for all the pages. It has to be all at the same time. So that's why it takes, it's a little more challenging, or a little more, you have to be more mindful of what you're doing to make sure that you're not, mixing the strips or getting them out of order, or they're upside down, that kind of thing. So that's the order that needs to happen. And both of the numbers, I always cut my strips, the pages, when I work with them, I cut the tops off, and then the bottom I leave on, like I've mentioned in lots of my videos. I leave it on because I don't want to lose track of what strip I need next. And in this case, it helps even more because the bottom is always going to be at the center point from this side and from this side. So you're not going to flip it around or forget this way. So just an added precaution to make sure that it's in the right order. Okay, so that's on that side. I'll work on some more. So let me show you, I guess, what I've done so far. This is what it looks like. So if I'm looking at the pages, okay, and then what's going to happen is the book will be flipped, and it's going to create another image. Now, the image here, we're working on it backwards because it's the upside down image, and this one's going to be backwards, but when I flip it, this is straight and that's backwards. So it'll make more sense once I kind of get more of the book done, and we'll see where it goes. All right, so I'll check in about halfway as my usual, and see where things stand at that point. Okay, I am not quite halfway through the book, but making progress. It's a little slower than I thought it would be. So I'm halfway through it. Like I said, I wanted to show you kind of the progress, but I'll do another couple strips. I ended up taking the top and the bottom off. Just make sure you keep the strips in the right order so you don't get mixed up. And again, I'm just now, as I'm progressing in the book, it gets a little harder to fold in here. And in hindsight, I probably not go all the way into the spine of the book. Maybe make a mark right along here somewhere, and then just do a fold from this mark to this mark, which would mean that the image would be shorter, but it would give you a little more space, I guess. You know, everything wouldn't be crammed right into the spine. But since I've already started this, I am trimming some of the top off for this pattern, and it really won't matter because I'm going to end up covering that tip part on the what's right against the spine. So I'll proceed with it all the way into the spine as best I can. That's what you kind of do with books. If it's something isn't quite working out as you're progressing with your design, see if you can make it work. So I'm folding in from the spine to the tip, to the line that I marked, which is halfway point between the two. And same on this side. And I want this to be right at the tip. And that's folded. Now I'm adding a little bit of tape in the middle just to hold this as a, you know, all together. And then double-sided tape 4 places, tips and then insides on both sides. So my next my next strip that I'm taking, I have to slide in all the way into the spine, and I found that if it doesn't quite want to slide in, whoops, then I will trim a little more off that area. But this I always wanted to hit right at the top. And if you have questions about, you know, how I'm making this, please don't hesitate to comment below. And the patterns that I used for this are mug images. So I went into Creative Fabrica. I have a link below for this particular pattern. But if you want to subscribe to Creative Fabrica, I'll have a link for that as well. And these images are for mugs. And it makes it, the thing with the mug, it's skinny. Obviously a mug is short, it's not like a tumbler. So the image is short, which works well for a panoramic type of look to it. So I just wanted to show you that's, you know, I added another set of strips to the next page, and then I'll show you my progress so far. And this is what each page is gonna look. And I know that as I get farther into the book, it's gonna get a little more difficult in the spine, but I will make it work. All right, so whoops, move the stand a little bit out of the way. There we go. And there's the top of the book. And then what happens is, if you flip the book, it's gonna be a different design. So when you're looking at the book, you don't really see the bottom. But then when you get tired of this design, you're just going to flip it and have a completely different design. So as you can see, you know, like right here is not as clean as I would like it. That's why I was mentioning that you can have this go a little bit farther out, which I'd probably do with the next book. And I'll finish it. I would finish it sooner because it's not taking so long wrestling with getting stuff in the middle. But it's a gorgeous design. So I'll finish the rest of this, which will take me a little while, but it's a fun design, having a top and a bottom to this. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Whoops. All right, so there's that, and then when we flip it, this pattern is coming together. And that's why it's important, because as I'm working on it, on this image, I'm going from the numbers on the pattern from 1, you know, ascending numbers, 1 through whatever, 175 on the strips, or 380 pages, I guess, because I'm skipping. So I'm going from 1 to the end of the book, and then this one, I'm starting at the end of the book as far as the pattern, and going the other way, because I'm working on both images at the same time. Okay, so I'll finish this up and then show you the finished design. Okay, so I finally finished this book, and because of the number of pages in the book, it's gonna be a little harder to display, so I'm using this type of display stand, easel stand. I can link it below so that you can see what I'm using for it. If it was fewer pages, then you could probably use something else, but this is the stand that I'm using. And this is one part of the book right there. So this is the top part, and I've embellished it with some rhinestones along the edges here, and then just some floral to kind of cover this area that is leads into the spine. So this is one version, and then when you get tired of looking at it this way, then you would just basically flip the book over this way and have a completely new design right there. So you can see, let's see if I have, this might be covering it a little bit. Let me move this flower a little up so you can see the hummingbird a little better. Whoops, there we go. So there's the hummingbird, and then if you look at it from this angle, then it's obviously, you know, just almost like a crest from each side. So the pattern that works the best for these would be the mug patterns, just because they're skinny this way and then also narrow. So it's almost like a panoramic. I mean, this would work fine if you were doing a horizontal book. But for this, because I kind of split the book in half basically, and it worked well for doing it in this design. So something new to think about, a new design, new idea. If you have any questions about this, please comment below. You're welcome to join my Facebook group. I will link the images for these two patterns right below. They're from Creative Fabrica. I will not add the patterns just because it doesn't, you know, that's very customized depending on how you need it done for the book that you have once you divide it in half. But you know, it makes for a really interesting conversation piece, that's for sure. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you some new ideas of things you could do with the book folding. It doesn't always have to be just the front of the book. I've done a couple of other videos you can watch. I did a vase with a similar idea where it was just the bottom part done. But hopefully this was inspiring. And again, if you have any questions, please comment below or join my Facebook group and either post a project like this that you've done or post your questions there. I'm always happy to help and answer questions. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next project.